Hi, welcome. As promised here, I'm going to do this second video and kind of focus on the near-death experience itself and what I experienced, what I saw. Um, first off, I want to say I was talking to my mom yesterday about this, that I know that if I experienced a near-death experience tomorrow, that experience would be totally different than this one that I had previously, just because I'm a different person and my perceptions and everything have changed. But the core would remain the same. And again, I'm trying to open up and give somebody, the information and validation of this is real. You're not going crazy. The We are mortal spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. There are parallel realities. There is life after death. Um, Anyways, back to, as I said in the first video, it's all of this happened over the course of like 2 or 3 days, but the beginning stages of it was dying over and over and over and over and over and over again. And the one thing that became very clear to me during that process is that no matter what type of death it was or how I died, like one, I had been hit by a car and I was conscious still, that my body was all broken and mangled. And then I got hit by another car, which then that was when the lights were out. And then it would start quickly passing through more. I can't remember all of them because it was too many to count. But that death was peaceful, because like even when I became aware that I was actually dying and that I was experiencing this, it was very peaceful. It was very calm and not traumatic or scary. Um, After I got through the dying processes, and I know from outside appearances, it would have looked like I was having seizures, some type of seizure. But and I still don't know the answer to this part of it. Um, it was as if I was being, it was like in like a crucifix pattern. Like my arms were out, my feet were down, but that my head would go through these different positions. And when it would go to the left, I knew it was going through darkness, and when it would go to the right, I knew it was going through light. And this happened over and over and over and over again. So much so that even after the experience, my head was all bruised from the way that my head would notch through these different positions. Once I got through that part, my awareness would kind of pause for a moment on a version of myself. Um, as I was starting to spiral up. And it was almost as if there was just another dimension of the hospital that I was in. And I want to say there were 12 levels. That's what keeps coming to me, is that there were 12 levels. And that I knew that each level that I went up into this hospital, the higher I was going in my awareness, in my consciousness, everything. And I kept being wheeled up, and it was like all of these other people that were in hospital beds being taken care of by staff, and I was aware that they were ascending as well. And eventually, once I got to the top level and then came out of that, that's when I experienced the unity consciousness, the Christ consciousness, the connection to everyone, everything, traveling to different universes with a thought. I mean, it's like it was there and you were doing it. It wasn't a thought. It just was happening. And I remember becoming very aware that I was no longer in physical form. And I made a note to myself to remember that sensation, that feeling, and to like, quote unquote, look around and see what was around me. And while I wasn't in physical form, I still knew I was an individual entity connected to all these other entities that were around me. And it was like all of our attention and was faced on, I guess, Earth, and because it was the images, the pictures, the things I was experiencing was being connected to people and feeling this just love and peace and joy. And it was like these little pinpricks of light that were just touching me all over, and just so much all at once. But I also made notation of how fluid and how easy and how amazing it felt. Like I was just like shocked that I was thinking so much and doing so much all at the same time, and it was just effortless. It was just completely easy. Then after this part, I started to spiral back down through different versions of myself. One level, I was someone who had invented a virtual reality system for prison inmates so that they could learn how to live and cope and deal with life before they were released from prison. So it was like a virtual reality that they were put into, and they learned how to live basically before they were released from prison. Another one was it was almost like in like Tony Stark and Iron Man, these computer screens everywhere that were just in midair, just there. And I was programming another virtual reality that people were living in, and I was conscious that this was me. And even if you don't have a mirror, you know what you look like, and you remember what your facial features are, or and so I was conscious and aware that I looked different than what you're seeing right now. And so then I descended, I guess, back into this form, this physical form. And as this was happening, there were a couple of different times I woke back up in the emergency room and they discharged me, and it was like the very first time I woke up and I was completely alert, and it was like shocking the staff, and I was just ready to go. I was ready to leave. And this one nurse was like trying to tell me that I couldn't leave, and I just kind of did a wave of my hand, and then she just stopped mid-sentence, and then she just totally changed the direction of the conversation. And I knew that I had done that I had controlled that. And so then I was moving through things, like I was actively aware that I was creating and changing events and changing things around. Again, to the outside person looking in, I just look like a crazy person, waving my hands around, talking to myself. But I was still connected to up there. I was talking to my soul family, my tribe that was helping me ease back into this transition of being human here. And the last time that I woke up in the emergency room, I just felt out of it. And they had given me a lot of antipsychotics, and so I was just out of it. I didn't know what was going on or what was happening, and they stuck me in a cab, and it drove me downtown to the homeless shelter, which I had never, experienced anything like this in my life before. And I remember getting dumped off at the front door. I didn't have any shoes. I was in clothes. I mean, I looked like a homeless street rat. I did. I was very disheveled and probably hadn't showered in God knows when. And I get dumped off at this homeless shelter, and they won't let me in. And so then I start walking, and I walked for several miles to the north side of town, and then all of a sudden it was just like the urge to walk stop. But there was this level of like I didn't have control over what was happening. Like it was like I just had to do it. And then I rode the bus back into town, which I didn't have any money on me at all. And I went to go catch the bus because I just thought, or maybe I could catch this bus, I could get on it. But they were like, no, you can't get on the bus, you got to have money. And I was like, oh. And so I stepped back, but then a gentleman got up and he paid for me to get on the bus to come back into town. And then some other people were very kind to me on the bus because they could tell I was just really out of it. But also, it was my soul family coming through and helping me and guide me through this process that I was going through. Eventually, I got back to the homeless shelter, and I had no idea what I was doing, what was happening. And there's this guy standing out there, and he immediately looks at me, and he was like, oh, I am so glad you're here. And he just comes running up to me, and I'm like, I don't know you from Adam. But then I just went with it because I was like, at least somebody's being nice to me. And so he helped me. He helped me get into the homeless shelter. He started telling me kind of the things that I needed to do. He was feeding me, making sure I had health. And for the first couple of weeks that I was at the shelter, he was there and he was helping me, and he was helping me work through these puzzles, because there were actual like puzzles that I was having to work through. And I could tell that until I finished this certain puzzle, I couldn't move forward. And these were the types of things that were happening. And then as I was going along, there were more and more people that came up to me like that, and they knew me. They knew who I was. Now, here, like, I didn't know them from anyone else, but I started to realize it wasn't this person, but I knew their soul, and our souls were connected, and that all of these people came into place to help me through this process. And through the whole time of living at the homeless shelter, it was always like that. There were all of these synchronicities, all of these conversations that happened at the right moment, the right time, that I was processing through things. And for all accounts, anyone else would just be devastated that they ended up in the homeless shelter, but I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be at that moment in time. And there's a verse in the Bible, which I'll look it up and I'll share the exact place of it. But Paul is talking about learning to be content with what he has when he's well fed, or whether he's hungry, whether he's poor, whether he's wealthy. And that's exactly the mindset I started to get to, was that I was just happy and content with exactly where I was, and starting to understand that this was a process I was going through. Eventually, there was one day I had to go to the library. I needed to research something, and the phrase spiritual awakening just popped into my mind, which it didn't pop in my mind. Of course, your higher consciousness and your spirit guides, they give you information. And I typed that into Google, and all of this information started popping up, and then all of a sudden these things started just clicking with me that this is what I'm going through. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not going crazy. This is actually a real thing, and it's really happening. And so once I came at it from that perspective and started realizing that this was a spiritual journey that I was on, things really started to change and to move. And because I became more open to these interesting synchronicities, like I could just be walking down the street in downtown, and someone would just start talking to me like they've known me for years, which they've known me. We've known each other our entire existences. It's just that we just ran into each other here. And there are so many people that are going through this process as well. Some realize it, some don't. And that's okay. Everyone is where they are on their path. like I said in the last video, eventually I had that moment where I'd gone on that 3-day bender with the drugs, and then I put it down, walked away, and have not touched it since. I've been over a year clean, and it hasn't bothered me one bit. And growing by leaps and bounds all the time as I am working through my karma, my issues. I mean, I'm now consciously aware of when I'm working through a pattern or a behavior that I've had in the past that is now coming back to mirror, reflect back to me, and I'm experiencing it from the other side. And it's really an amazing, crazy journey, but it's if you just relax and you go with the flow and don't get overwhelmed by all the information that's out there. Just take what resonates with you and leave the rest. And that's just my guide and what I have been doing, because I always ask that I see what I need to see, hear what I need to hear, and speak what I need to speak. Because as long as I'm going towards the light, working on my way up, and not staying in the lower vibrational, everything just keeps getting better, because the inside of me is getting better, and then therefore it's reflected out and around. Yeah, so that is kind of more detailed about what I experienced in that. I hope this was helpful to some, and or interesting to say the least. But it profoundly has changed the direction of my life. I'll say like and subscribe to the channel, because I plan on doing more videos as I have a lot of little insights and things that I've learned and that have been revealed to me that may help, and they may not. But I know that right now I'm speaking my truth, and I'm putting myself out there to hopefully maybe help some others of you. You're okay. It's all right. And there is love all around you, and you just have to be open to receiving it. And that's been a lesson for me to learn, is to receive love and to know when to ask for help. And that was a big one, because I was always very independent. I've always taken care of myself, but learning how to ask for help and humbling myself to do that was a big lesson that I learned. And it's okay, because each of us are where we are on our pathways. We're all growing and changing. And, if I can help some of you with that process, then that makes my heart very happy. If you have any questions or anything like that, leave it in the comments, and I'll definitely read them. And I appreciate you watching this video, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Love and light.